Well, here we are, about 6 months since the last patch on the GTA series on the Nintendo Switch and other platforms, and 1.0.7 has mysteriously turned up with some pretty vague patch notes. Taking a leaf from Nintendo's book, they've been hard at work improving stability. Well, what does that mean for the Nintendo Switch version? We'll go through the frame rates, we'll look at the performance, the visual quality in both docked and handheld. My name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp. Remember, you can save 10% on any of your eShop games just using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg and buying your eShop credit there. Patch 1.0.7, what's it all about? Well, let's find out. First off then, let's start with the slightly controversial issue that some people have looked into the code base of the game, and it looks like Rockstar may have taken this away from the hands of Grove Street. Now that's not confirmed, and in fact the original tweet has been deleted about that, but it's here nor there really. What's more interesting is that there is some code that suggests the game will release on Steam. If you watched the previous patch video, that was 1.06, I suggested that it received an overall C- grade and was now ready for human consumption, but that there were still quite a few issues. Straight off the bat, I will say that 1.0.7, not quite living up to its name as a stability patch in my opinion. It's more of a mystery patch. Why? Well, I seem to have noticed more issues than in the last one. I'll go into the issues that I've faced, as well as some potential improvements, but it's certainly not the night and day patch we saw between 5 and 6. If for some reason you haven't checked out the game since it first launched, well, frame rates are significantly improved. Now we have 30 frames per second more often than not, and the frame pacing is definitely better than it was. Better than 0.6 though, I'm not so sure. Now the frame pacing changed the way that the input latency felt, making everything feel much more responsive. And there's a chance it's again a tiny bit more responsive in terms of its input latency. But overall, for the third game, not a great improvement over the last patch. Still playable, but also still featuring some frame pace stutters, and that's both in docked as well as handheld. Now in my opinion, handheld has always been the preferable way to play the Switch game, and everything feels just that little bit more responsive and smooth. Visually, perhaps that's an area that Rockstar have worked on a little. Now, I know we had dynamic lights in some form in the earlier builds, but the dynamic lighting certainly seems to be a little more sharp than it was before. This is particularly evident when you're using your car up close to items and their shadows are cast realistically against the back walls. Also, on the visual front, since the original patches at least, the work that they've done on the shop fronts and overall quality of the AI upscaling, which was a bit of a nightmare at one point, is definitely clear. Draw distance seems to be almost identical to the last patch, and that takes me on to a few glitches that they really do need to iron out. Firstly, when you look closely at, say, the wheels of your car, there's some very unusual artifacting. It almost looks like they've used AI upscaling. Sometimes you get that. It might show up on text or other areas. But here the wheels just look strange. Rain, which already had seen some work and was much better than that was at launch, looks fine. It actually looks like it's falling from the sky. But again, has it improved since the last patch? I'm not so sure. Certainly Rockstar still has some work to do in terms of ironing out bugs, as you'll see here with the Doc and Marty just passing down the street. Which takes us then on to Vice City. Just as with GTA 3, potentially the image quality is ever so slightly better, but one of my biggest bugbears in all three of the titles is the weapon wheel. Now originally this worked fine, but then a visual bug was introduced, maybe in patch 1.04 or 5, around the items, as you can see here, and that still hasn't been fixed with these huge stability updates. There are also a number of strange visual anomalies. If you look at the area surrounding the bike here, I'm not sure if it comes out on your screen, but there's a strange blurring effect that's hard to articulate, but makes it look like the ground isn't moving around your vehicle. The previously mentioned dynamic lights only apply to non-static scenery, so any lampposts, fences or other destroyable items, even some of the static ones such as trees, won't cast realistic shadows. Performance is okay across the board with this game, and I actually find it to be a little smoother than GTA 3, and again more so when you're playing in handheld. By the way, if you like these Joy-Cons, all the information is in the description. Someone always asks. Handheld feels smoother again than the docked mode, and generally the visual quality remains intact. But I have to say, the longer I play, the more strange little things I notice. Like when you get out of your car and its ability to cast dynamic lighting suddenly ceases. Obviously it's there to improve performance as it's not necessary once you're away from the car, but surely disabling it once you leave the area would make more sense. There's one more for the list, Rockstar. So then over to San Andreas. Now I love San Andreas, and when it first came out, this was the one that had the biggest frame pacing issues. And I would say that potentially it's the one that's received the most work. And certainly it's much smoother than it was. If that's more so than the previous patch, no, I don't think so. It really doesn't feel like they've changed an awful lot in that regard. But maybe the image quality is slightly better, some of the textures, again, some of those signs, the little details perhaps have seen some work. I had forgotten the fact that the Switch version used some screen space reflections, and there were actually a few impressive moments, like the reflection off the top of this van. Frame rates are the same, 30 FPS, a few stutters here and there, but okay and definitely playable. Now, San Andreas is the one that I've noticed the most, maybe new issues or ones that potentially I didn't notice before. Although I don't have footage of it, there are a few streets where the road markings don't actually line up. So you may have a roundabout and the markings down the centre don't match up at all. Also, when you're doing things like working out and you've got different status changes, say you've put on more muscle or whatever, I noticed that there's nothing actually coming up on screen at all, which makes it pretty much impossible to know what's changing, what stats have increased and decreased. And rain, which was previously fixed and working fine, I've noticed some real audio issues with. Listen to the rain sound here. It's almost as if it's cutting in and out. And then we have the road to nowhere. It seems like some of the path maps around the city either were always broken, but I don't remember this, or they've been broken since the new patch. The AI here think that the road leads straight up into this house. I only noticed it because I was stood still looking at some of the textures and image quality, and I heard a series of explosions. When I went round the corner, well, these idiots were doing this. I am aware from the community as well that there are lots of clipping bugs, and there are a couple of levitations that I had when I was climbing over walls that I'm sure I didn't have before. It's a shame I can't have two switches, one with the old patch, one with the new, and compare directly the different elements. But as far as stability improvements, not so much. What's the opposite of that? And Rockstar, please do continue improving these games, but make sure, if at all possible, you can give the community patch notes, because it's very frustrating just having the game has received stability improvements and then playing it and seeing no stability improvements. Is the game in a playable state? Well, yes, it's still playable as it was in the last patch. Is it more stable? Not particularly, no. Let me know in the comments if you've noticed any other weird quirks, because I do personally feel that there are more bugs in this version than there were in the last. Maybe I'm going mad, I don't know, it has been a long time since the last one, but the last check that I did was on the load times. Now previously when you exited CJ's house, the load time was exactly 10 seconds. This time, well, I think it was 12. Again, there are other factors that influence that, and I know that's within the boundaries of coincidence. But, yes. I wonder what we will get with the proper patch 1.1, and I do want to know what's happening with Rockstar and Grove Street Games. Thanks to all of you that enjoy this type of content. I have another one in the works for the recent No Man's Sky patch that included obviously all of the 4 update features as well as some performance fixes. So I'll be hopefully launching that one tomorrow or the next day. As I said at the start, if you want to save 10% on any of your eShop vouchers, you can use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg and we get a tiny little bit kickback from Nintendo. It's all official and above board. Thanks to our members and Patreons, and as always for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!